Yeah, let's jump straight into it. Victor, how are you?
Great. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for taking the time to talk with us. Now, there's a new album. What I always find very interesting whenever a band releases an album is what the starting point is for that album. So do you remember what kind of was the jumping off point? Was it a concept? Was it just a couple of riffs and song ideas? How did this whole circus get started?
Yeah, so we basically wrote this album over the course of 2 years, but yeah, there's more that goes into that really. There's what
Sure.
happened with our previous album. So our previous album, Intemen, came out. People enjoyed it. We got a lot of positive feedback and a lot of
Mhm.
touring thanks to it. And I would even call it like a breakthrough album to a degree.
Okay.
We ended up playing within this cycle some really big festivals like Hellfest, for instance,
Sure.
So some very big highlights so far in the band's journey. So obviously, the question is when you are finishing with an album like this, and obviously during the album cycles, the writing of Voidkind was already very much started, but there was a moment where we did Etemenenka, got the album ready for live, and this took the best part of like 6, 7, 8 months of
Okay.
work with people changing. We had like different members. We had to add someone on the scenes because I wrote scenes on Etemen, and we needed to have someone to come on the scenes to play those parts.
Sure.
And then we had to make sure that we were able to do these songs as closely to the record as possible, so people wouldn't feel like they've been sold short. And when that happens, it kind of also allowed us to identify what we're good at, what we're not so good at, what works, what doesn't work. And then touring as well helped us
Okay.
with that. What do people vibe with? What do we enjoy playing? What is the thing that resonate with us and with the audience the best? And from that, we kind of came to a conclusion, which was we wanted to offer, because we always want to make records that feels different than the previous records. We
Sure.
wanted to make an album that would feel different, and we identify what this would be. So we kind of had a wish list that was built based on Etemen and based on the live version of Etemen as well. And
Mm.
what we came up with was more, we wanted a few more direct songs. We wanted a more I have an approach that is different. How do we make something that's different? Well, Etemen has a lot of long songs. Can we maybe have a few more concise songs? And then how do we build on what was cool and bring a new element to that? So I think we did that exactly the way we wanted to, which is amazing because I wasn't sure we were able to do this, to be honest. And so we wrote songs that were shorter. We had a few like really shorter songs, and then for the longer songs, we got different type of build up and different kind of
Sure.
different kind of like structures as well. And then on the top of that, we also thought about the sound of the album. What could we do to make the album sound different? Well, we mentioned the directness and the fact that we want the live versions to be as quite close to what happens on the records. Well, we did that too. We wanted a drum that was more present, so we recorded in a tower, which has like a proper room acoustic. Okay,
Okay.
done. And guitars, we did similar things. We recorded in the same rooms with like a sound that really felt like this is my guitar, and it's on the left of the side of things. And then on the right, we've got Alan's playing guitar. Alan, our bassist, plays the guitar on this album. So we want to have this right guitar that's also really present and like distinct,
Mm.
and they work together rather than having like guitars that just feels like it's guitar everywhere. And then the bass being kind of sitting in the middle to just bring everything together. And then where does the synth sit and how it's going to happen live, all these kind of things. So yeah, same. After then you start thinking about vocals and all these kind of things. But now to go back to your question, how did it really start? Well, there was this moment of reflection on the previous album, and then there was a moment of writing. When we start writing songs, we just decided to not uh, try to finish the songs. We really just had a bunch of songs. We had
Mm.
14 songs demoed from memory. And from that, we only kept 9 songs, really,
Okay.
with like a little interlude. So the album is 10, I think it's 10 tracks, this album.
Sure.
We got rid of 4 songs. Sometimes we just picked elements from it and built them into some other songs, and then we kind of rearranged the album at that stage. A lot of that happened in the studio too. A lot of that happened even toward the mixing stage as well. Sometimes we're
Okay,
like, this part, now, bin it. We're just gonna stick to this, and it's gonna be, we're just trying to make the best song possible, really. Um, so yeah, here you go. That's kind of the process of this record. It's a all never-ending process. I feel like if we didn't finish the master, now we will still probably be like nitpicking
sure.
at things. Not necessarily for the best. I think we the cut point was the right cut point, but it's always moving. Let's put it this way.
No, I think you can go on tinkering with things forever if you want to. So it's good to have a deadline or some
Yeah,
point in time where you go, okay, now we're done. Now we shouldn't touch it anymore. But
totally.
I do find it interesting what you said about Eteman and kind of looking back and reviewing what that album cycle was like as well, because you mentioned it being kind of this breakthrough in terms of musicality then and not only skill of the band but just the development of the band. Do you feel the growth with Eteman and then now continuing that growth? How do you
Yes.
perceive? Because maybe from the outside you can see, okay, they've had more success with Eteman, but how do you feel it from your perspective in terms of musicality and then kind of developing and songwriting?
Well, with Etemen, it was the first album that we put out there that I liked our previous releases, but it was the first time I felt like this album stands out
Mm.
within all the music scene, and I felt like legit to put it out there. I felt like cool. I don't feel like if I'm going on playing like a big festival, I'm not gonna feel like a total fraud, if that makes sense.
Mm,
Just
sure.
felt like it really helped us with our confidence as well as a band. Um, and then on now with Voidkind, what happened is because we had this transition with Etemen of writing the album, making sure we were able to play it live, our music skills went up, I
Mm,
think. And in general, Dudley is getting better every day with the drums. We don't play with click tracks at all, but we
okay.
practice with click tracks. So we practice sometime in the studio or at home. So, but then when we play together, we're not playing to the click track, we are playing to each other. And I think we are getting better at this. We're quicker to find like what works and what doesn't work again. And then obviously I feel like I'm a better guitarist. I think all the different members in the band are better musicians because of the fact that our music is challenging. And then the same applies to vocals. The
Sure.
vocals I think are one of the bigger like step up between Etemen and now. And it's funny, the other day I was listening to something on Tidal, and our first album came up on it,
Okay.
Asheron, and I was like, holy cow, I sound terrible. Like I wasn't really happy with the vocals, and then sometime I'm listening to something from Etemen when it pops up or when I'm practicing it, and I hear like vocals on it, and the vocals are not bad on this album, but I just feel like and everything, to be honest, man, the drum, the production, everything. I'm just like, I'm very happy with where we are at now. And it feels like Etemen was a step up. I feel like Voidkind is a step up in terms of musicality and production. Doesn't mean people necessarily like one or the better more. I think it will resonate in a different way with people, which is good.
No, I think so as well. And listening to Voidkind, I certainly agree. The production that's one of the things that immediately I noticed that the production is very tight and like you said, you can hear the separate instruments and it's not like just a wall of sound. You can hear
Mm.
the dynamics within it. So that's really cool how you did that. Before we get into the album a little bit deeper, what is kind of the general way you write as a band? Because you mentioned those demos and then having 14 demos and then together trying to figure out which one works the best. But how early do, for instance, lyrics come in, or what are the focus points in those early demos? Are they the riffs? Are they how
The
much of
riffs.
that? Okay.
Yeah, very much the riff. So because as I was like, we're basically breaking down the recording in kind of 2, 3 phases. There's the initial foundations of the songs, and I think we always say that the foundations of the song is a perfect way to talk about it. And then
Mm,
we've got the finishing things on top. So you've got the foundation of a house. Is the house gonna walk? As like, is it gonna stand up and stand?
sure.
they're not going to fall apart. That's what I'm trying to say.
Like the
And then the
foundation, right?
vocals, yeah, get the foundation right, interesting foundations, and then start putting that the little elements like the leads, the synths, the vocals, and all these kind of things. And on this album, really the bass, guitars, and drums are the foundations, and especially the drums, I must say. The riffs is important, but the drums kind of reacts to the riff and vice versa. And sometimes we have a riff that's mostly there. Then when the drums are recorded, actually in the studio, we are changing the riff slightly
Okay.
to make it more interesting and these kind of things. But we are a riff-driven band for sure, and so we had this initial the initial moment to. I'm going to try to be concise. I'm a bit of
No worries. That makes my
chatter.
job easier.
So basically, what's happening is when we start the process of writing the songs, it might be I've got a couple of riffs at home. Alan has a couple of riff albums. Sometimes Alan has a full songs. I sometimes have a full songs, but from experience, it's rare for me to have a full songs that I
Mm,
propose to the table and that I end up being that. We always end up picking up two, three elements of it, and then I end up maybe using other parts for other songs. So for me, I prefer the having like a couple of things ready for jam for practice. Alan might have a couple of things ready for jam. We send some stuff to each other so we kind of know what to play on the guitars. And then we go and meet our drummer. And then this is an interesting process for us because our drummer is excellent is a good thermometer of if a song has potential or no.
mm,
Most of the time, sometime no, but most of the time, yes. So he'll be like, Doddy will be in the room, I'll play something, try some drums. He doesn't really get it, or he doesn't really get a vibe from it. And that's kind of a good indication that's probably not it doesn't have a lot of potential.
mm.
Sometime, however, Alan and I might have something that we think about for the drums. Alan might be programming some drums at home to just go, hey, here this kind of what I'm hearing. Or me, I'm terrible at programming drums, so I try to mouse things. So I'm going like, try to go and do that, which is a nightmare for a drummer, but
Sure.
he ends up working. But 90% of the time, Dudley is good at picking up on something and go, this is interesting. Or sometimes I'm playing something as well, and I think it's totally crap, but the two other guys go, this is kind of cool, and they're playing something on top,
Mm,
and orderly will have like a groove on it that just makes me slightly change the riff, but like slightly, and then there's just a whole dynamic of the new dynamics of the song happening. So this is extremely important this phase because if that part is not good, the album is not going to be good.
mm.
And you want this to be right because we are a band of dynamics and we are a band of dynamic change as well in
Sure.
general. So the initial composition is everything, I think. And then the second part is also important because you can have great foundations, but you can totally fuck it. With
Yeah.
like the finished product, you can have crap lyrics, you can have crap vocals, you can have bad scenes. The leads might not be that interesting. And weirdly enough, it's the first thing people listen to. The first stuff you listen to when you listen to a band is the vocals.
Mm,
So sometimes you listen to a band and you're like, "Ah, vocals, I hate them. Which might happen with our music, huh? Maybe some people will hate that. But it's the first thing people will latch on, and then they're gonna start dive into the rest. So you cannot an equal amount of attention needs to happen. But I think the hardest part is the foundations because this takes the best part of like a year and a half, and it needs to
okay.
be regular work. It needs to be like 2-3 times a week and refine as you go. You cannot just go, oh, we just had two jams, don't do anything, and then have two jams. You have to jam, take that home, think about it, obsess a little bit about it from time to time,
Mm.
and then go. So there's a lot of highs and lows within that, but you got to trust the process. The process works, so we're gonna stick to it.
You mentioned the dynamics, and one of the standout tracks for me was Reliquary, which goes in through all those different kind of tempos and feelings and emotions. You mentioned the foundation stage. So for Reliquary, how did that foundational stage go? What was the initial idea, and how did you kind of figure out what to put where?
So Reliquary is a song that was mostly written by Alan in terms of like
Okay.
the foundation parts of things. So he had most of the beginning of the song is him Yeah, it is. Actually, most of the riff, man, most of the song is in. There's a couple of moments that are jammed at the end, but it's mostly him. So he had something that was quite close to the finished product.
Okay.
I believe he also even had like ideas for some of the drums on this one. So this song is mostly him. So it's maybe less. I remember, however, him bringing him on the table and us because it takes a bit of when someone brings a whole songs to you, it's not really your song anymore. So sometimes you kind of not push back, but you kind of brush it for a while, and then because you want to focus on your own things. But then when it comes to like the demo, like we had all these demos done, I remember being Dirty and I being like the we had some he had some really good interesting drums on it, and then you start thinking about some really fun things you can do with it, and it quickly became a one of those songs that we were like this is going to be a good one.
Mm.
Um, so maybe not the best example in terms of like one song
Okay.
that kind of took forever. Maybe a better song for that would be the closing. Actually,
Okay.
there's loads of them. Eleonora, Cobalt Sun Necropolis. So you tell me which songs, other songs maybe resonate with you. Maybe I can tell you a story about that.
Well, you mentioned the last track, Cobalt Sun Necropolis. So let's dive into that one then. What was the well, let me ask this first, because how do the themes and lyrics for this album or even specifically songs come together? Is that something you do particularly? Is that something you do as a group? How do they come together?
We kind of have an initial chat of what we want to talk about. I remember wanting to talk about. I kind of looked at what the topics were of the previous albums and see what else we want to explore, and so
Mm,
we don't end up talking about the same stuff,
right.
Um, and there is really we wanted to talk on about religion, organized religion, and religion fanaticism. These were the kind of topic. So religion altogether. Um, the good, the bad. There is elements of it which we sometime in when you talk about these topics, you kind of make it black and white. I think it's very gray. There's some really
Sure.
definitely black moments on this like horrendous thing that happens, like torture, martyrdom, all these kind of things that come sometime in the stories of religion. But I wanted personally to have a story that represents many different facades of religion and the story of a
Mm,
religion. Its inception, how it spreads to people, how organized things happen. There's pilgrimage as well in it that we talk about. There's a building of a great city and of a great civilization. War, another element
sure.
to it that we explore. And also, I've talked about organized religion, how sometimes people get lured and seduced,
Right.
sometimes for the worse, into things that has nothing to do with their religion, sometimes to time, and fanaticism also
Sure.
being an interesting element to that. So yeah, we talked about that because we have something to say, but it's just mostly that it's a topic that's never not happening really. We're in 2024 and it still is happening all over the world, right?
Yeah.
Um, and has happened in the past in very interesting way and dark ways sometimes to time, but also beautiful ways. There is like within religion, there is a lot of interesting things that happens. The creation of art, the creation
Sure.
of great cities, the creation of great philosophy too. There is like a
Yeah.
lot of amazing philosophy that comes from religion, and we kind of touch on that as well. And then
Sorry to
yeah,
interrupt, but
go for it,
like
go for it.
I definitely think you go into that whole kind of history of theology, which is very interesting because, like you say, the religion. To me, that this is just my perception, but religion is very much a human story. It's not something godly or otherworldly to me. It's just how humans interact with these kind of ideas and ideologies. So it's very interesting to explore kind of the human side of how we like you said, how religion originated, but also how we use religion or how religion has been used to push ideas and all that kind of stuff. So are there any hesitations? But because within well, I think within metal there's a little bit more room for talk about religion. But do you ever, and this doesn't have to be specifically about this album, but do you ever think, well, maybe I shouldn't go talk about this, or maybe we shouldn't dive too deep into this area?
No, not really. I
Okay.
think I don't think like I would be surprised if there is any issue that comes out of it, and if there is, so be it. The
No,
the
I don't think so either. But
yeah,
some artists they are kind of, well, maybe we shouldn't talk about this, or
yeah, well, I mean, they talk about you talk about whatever you want in this day and age.
fair
I
enough.
think I don't really believe so much in the cancel culture. I'm like, nobody's gonna cancel
Yeah,
anybody, really.
that's
Everyone is
true.
just doing their business as usual. I just think people have opinions and they are entitled to it. If people have opinions about what we write about, fine.
Mm,
That might create an interesting discussion. I'm not even sure. Is that, to be honest, I also want to add to what I was saying in terms of I've presented it from the serious side of things. There is also a very much escapism side of
yeah.
things to what we are doing in the music, but also in the story, because in this there is an actual God in it. There's like an actual being, some kind of um, horrendous hive mind, which isn't horrendous. It's just like another kind of animal that is present and has been seduced people to there to bring to go there, and
Mm,
actually it is fulfilling what he has promised. It's just within this journey people lose themselves, so it's like they lose their humanity and they become something
mm,
else, and then there is like we also create things that are serious, but we also create things because we have a lot of fun doing this, so we want to have like we mentioned a book, but we also mentioned video games being a big inspiration for us on the story of the album. The video game Blasphemous is one of them, but also
okay.
all the From Software video games like Dark Soul and Bloodborne, Elden Ring, all these kind of things. Because the stories are like it's like super dark, but come on, it's super fun as well to play, isn't it? You're
Yeah.
like like it's fascinating. It's a bit morbid, huh? But it's kind of cool. You're like, oh, they just went into another universe, or they just drank something from a bowl, and then they are doing all these kind of
Mm.
things, and yeah, I think there's an element of us having fun with this. So it's not that serious. It is serious because the topic is serious, and you can find things to maybe look at from like a news and actuality perspective, and but outside that, we're not preaching anything here.
No, but that's interesting that you say that, because there is that fantasy element. I mean, as you mentioned, I mean, as the band name already says, you've been
Yeah.
inspired by kind of science fiction, and that kind of element where you say, as you mentioned, it can be escapist. So I only played Sekiro. I haven't played the other ones, but
Oh, the
I mean,
hardest one is the hardest one you've played.
once you get it, it's the best. Once you
Right.
kind of figure it out, it's awesome. But I get that kind of it's kind of this strange, not even horror, but the kind of fantasy type world that you dive into. And I read that you also were inspired by something like Berserk, the
Yes.
animated movies and stuff. And those are kind of these exaggerations of real things, but then exaggerated in a way. Uh, with which to explain certain things, or kind of give emotion to it. So I really like that influence. Let's get finally then. Let's get back to Cobalt Sun Necropolis, because I still want to talk about that one. Um, yeah, you mentioned that maybe one that's better to talk about the foundation, and so when do the lyrics come in for a song like that, for instance? Because do you
So
first write the music and then kind of get inspired by the music as well to for certain lyrics, or?
yeah, it's like 70% the music first, and then sometimes the concept and the lyrics come in, and we readjust. But the lyrics is very much at the end because we finish with the vocals most of the time. We kind of usually have an idea, we scope it out, thinking, right, that's probably enough of this part being played before we get bored, or before we can add anything interesting and develop on. But Cobalt Sun Necropolis used to be two songs. It used to
Okay.
be two songs that we had nicknamed Space Cult, and actually was a part of another part of a song that became basically the song Abode of the Perfect Soul and Cobalt Sun Necropolis used to have parts in each other's, and then we ended up dividing them
Right.
because we felt like they were closer. They would make more sense that way. So at first for us, Cobalt Sun Necropolis was a bit of a Frankenstein of a song, and we didn't have any way to start the song. We were starting straight with the main main verse chorus, and it didn't feel right. And then we had a real issue to join the second part of it with the first part, and the second part comes with that riff, the which is like where the drums comes in, and it really kind of feels like two songs. But the problem is like the first part felt like a very pretty kind of it's not that heavy to start with, but we only had a verse chorus, and so we had to work that backward. And I remember this happened in the studio as much as it happens in a rehearsal space. And we had this part that we loved jamming. We were hating the fact that we couldn't make a song out of it, and then we managed to make bridges between them. And weirdly enough, sometimes this goes terribly. Here it went brilliantly. I think I love the mid section, which has no drums. It's just a guitar doing a thing. And I'm not saying that because it's my part. It's just I think the band also really like that moment because there's a shift that happens. And then just before that, there's also a shift that is also happening. And what I love about this song is it starts as you feel like with the guitar intro, you feel like it's going to go into something really dark. Then you've got this kind of opeth triple vocal harmonies over the top thing, really. That's maybe on the borderline of being a little cheesy. And then you switched into a Neurosis kind of dark vibe, which then becomes a guitar on its own, which builds up even more atmosphere. And then here's a switch. I hear the switch that is happening on the guitar, and then something that has a bit more of a rhythm and of a drive to finish the songs, and then the songs ends up into this like wall of noise and craziness. I love that song because I just think it covers such a wide range of things, and I still think it's cohesive, like coherent. It still has like
Sure.
it still is going through paces. So yeah, what's interesting about this song is I think it covers all the different elements of us and the way we write music. Some stuff are done at home, some stuff have been stuff we've jammed a lot, and then some stuff are just stuff that came off the cuff in the studio while we were recording. So yeah, it's a good sideway on all the techniques we use. Let's put it this way.
That's awesome to hear, and then I'm probably gonna hear it a little bit different now if I with what you told me. Now I'm gonna listen to it again and see if I can pick up on all those things. I have one more question, because I do find it interesting with what you mentioned. You mentioned the word atmospheric, and there is, especially with the longer songs, there is that cinematic quality to the music that you make. And we talked about kind of the fantasy influences and kind of I don't want to say pop culture, but science fiction and fantasy and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
How important is the visual side of to the band? The kind of the more, I don't know, graphic novel type
super
influences.
important.
Okay.
Super important, and it was super important in Etemen as well. Etemen, it was even crazier. During Etemen, we had the artwork already ready, and we had
Okay.
we put the artwork in the recording rooms and
Okay.
stuff like that. And it's the same story with Voidkind. We kind of knew what the artwork would be like. We knew the artists we were working with, and that kind of we also like the concept was getting solidified as we were going. So when we had the demos finished, not the demos, but like the initial demos, and we had 14 tracks. Part of the selection process is based on quality, but there's also an element of that doesn't really feel like it's fitting.
Mm,
And then on the back of it, then the lyrics and all these kind of things. So let's talk about a song to give you an example. The song Pleroma, which is our first single.
mm,
Um, Kind of poppy on to start with, like but we because it was that poppy to start with, and we were a bit like we had reservations about the verse chorus bridge thing that is happening because it's like it doesn't get more pop in terms of structure. We had a
sure.
bit of a reservation around that. When we start writing it, we enjoyed it, but we were like, is it gonna just feel like, one of those songs where you're like, what happened here? It's
Mm,
a weird one. So we start thinking about it as how do we make this fit within the concept, and how do we make it what can we do to make it work with the visuals and with the vibe of the album. And we did that with the intro, like the cinematic guitar and synth
sure.
intro, and then the big kind of cloud kicker ending, which is basically a reprisal of the intro. And so now you've got a pop thing that's kind of accessible in the middle, but then surrounding it, you've got this kind of
Mm.
hypnotic, and it's not much to it. There's just one riff that is kind of looped in a way, and we progress around that loop. So here you go. Now
But
we
that's
have,
awesome, right?
yeah,
That you
yeah.
can add those small texture details and little intros and things, and that kind of completely changes the feel of a song.
Mm.
That's
Yeah,
that's really cool.
no, totally. You kind of nearly make a song that shouldn't make sense on this record makes complete sense. You
Right.
go like, all right, here we go. I'm in another place, and you can picture things. I think Pleroma, while being a short song, is one of the most cinematic one. So
Mm.
that's why we did a music video for it. So yeah.
No, that's very interesting to hear, and thank you. It's been a very enlightening conversation. I feel like the next time I'll listen to the album, I'm going to hear it a little bit different, which is always cool. Victor, may I
Um,
thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
no, well, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.